What's up, my fellow YouTubies? Welcome back to the channel of Mike the Great Studios. So, a couple weeks ago, I had gotten out of the theater seeing Black Adam, and now that some time has passed, I can finally give my ranking of all 12 DCEU movies from worst to best. You can also see I also did a review on Black Adam a couple weeks ago when I first saw it. You can even check that out on my YouTube channel. And with all that in mind, let's get started. Coming in last place is going to have to be Justice League from 2017. And I actually really liked this movie when I first saw it. I loved all the humor and jokes, especially the stuff coming from The Flash. It was nice seeing Superman as more of a traditional, like Christopher Reeve version in the third act. And it was just nice seeing the Justice League on the big screen all together in live action for the first time. But the more I started rewatching this movie and the more I started looking at some of the jokes and stuff, and after seeing the Snyder Cut, it just started looking ridiculous, and I finally started to realize that this movie did not come together when it was first released, because they brought in the guy who directed the first two Avengers movies to replace Zack Snyder, and his vision does not at all fit with the brooding Man of Steel and Batman v Superman films, and so all the jokes and stuff that played into this movie, they just did not work. They worked with the Avengers movies, but in here, when comparing to Zack Snyder's universe, they just felt a little too forced. And it just like they removed from all the nice emotional elements that Zack Snyder put in his version. If I didn't see Zack Snyder's version of this movie, it would be a whole lot higher on this list, probably, but I just don't think that this movie even needs to exist anymore. So for me, it easily comes in last place. At number 11 is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and I actually debated putting this one in last place because I get so frustrated with this movie whenever I watch it. But unlike Joss Whedon's version of Justice League, this one actually had some elements in it that I really enjoy. I really love all the action inside of this movie, especially the final battle with Doomsday and Wonder Woman shows up. And just finally seeing the trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman in live action together. And even the warehouse fight sequence with Batman was pretty cool. The fight between Batman and Superman itself was pretty cool. The ideas in this movie are also pretty great. But the plot line, I think that this movie is just ruined by its entire plot line. And I think that Zack Snyder was just given too many ideas to put this movie together. He had thought between making a Man of Steel sequel, a movie where Batman first shows up, and making a Justice League setup movie. It's trying to do like three different things, and you like really see that throughout the entire movie, where it's going back and forth between Batman and Superman stories. It also has some pretty stupid ideas. First of all, casting Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, I don't think it really worked. And even Superman dying at the end, I just didn't really like that idea. So this movie, while it has some great action, it has a whole lot of problems. Making it into the top 10 is Wonder Woman 1984, and for me, I just wasn't on board with this movie from the start. Even when they first announced it, I didn't like the idea they were going for with bringing Steve Trevor back. I think it cheapens Wonder Woman's character a whole lot, and then when I first watched it, it just got even more disappointing. But it was still nice seeing Gal Gadot continuing her storyline as Wonder Woman and seeing her in the 1980s. It was nice seeing Pedro Pascal in the movie, but the whole plot line with the wishing stone and him granting wishes to everybody, it just didn't make sense, and it was just like too much going on inside of that. And I also really think it wasted Cheetah's character, taking Wonder Woman's iconic nemesis and then just making her the Cheetah until like the last third act. So this movie disappointed me on quite a lot of elements. At number 9 is Suicide Squad from 2016, and I actually really like this movie a lot more than most people. I've rewatched it a couple of times, and I really like the cast, especially Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, or even Will Smith as Deadshot, the little mercenary, or Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. Jared Leto as the Joker can have a couple of issues, but the cast in this movie is pretty enjoyable as these characters, and the movie is still a whole lot of fun. But this, just like Batman v Superman, this was an example of the WB trying to rush things for the directors. They gave David Ayer only 6 weeks to write the script, which is not enough time to write a 2-hour blockbuster. You can see that there's a whole lot of production issues in this movie with all the pop songs and too much rock music and all that stuff going on. And the Enchantress as the villain is pretty stupid. So this movie is still enjoyable enough, but definitely not one of the strong points of the DCEU. At number 8 is Aquaman, and the DCEU version of Black Panther just seems a little bit too corny at certain points, especially with all the humor with hero poses or people eating roses or stuff like that, people sticking their heads in toilets. It is a pretty goofy movie for doing this kind of Lion King, Black Panther-ish story. But still, Jason Momoa in this movie is a whole lot of fun. He just made Aquaman so much more of a cool character, and his journey throughout the movie, starting off as this guy not looking to be a hero, and embracing that destiny, becoming the king of Atlantis, or not just the king of Atlantis, but the king of the seas and the hero that takes over. And it is just a perfect journey for this kind of character not looking to be a hero and then making that big journey towards the end. So this movie is enjoyable enough, just pretty corny at times. At number 7 is Black Adam, the most recent movie in the DCEU. And I just thought that this movie was a ton of fun. It delivers some like great action from The Rock, especially that first opening sequence with him. And I really love the story that this movie goes for with this guy who is not a hero and is born out of the power of rage and does some horrible things like killing people. And that journey with like that kind of idea of like this one group of people who sees him as their hero, their champion, and the Justice Society that sees him as the villain. It's all pretty great having those elements inside of it. Also, like, really enjoy even the action from some of the other heroes with the Justice Society, especially Dr. Fate was the standout, or even Hawkman. So I know that the internet has been trashing this movie lately over the past couple of weeks, but I actually really enjoy this movie, and this is the first time I've disagreed with Rotten Tomatoes. And if it's got The Rock in it, it's gonna be enjoyable enough. So I like this movie a whole lot. Number 6, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. I hope I said that title right. So, I was really anticipated with this movie when it was coming out, and a big part of that was just Harley Quinn, seeing Harley Quinn a whole lot more front and center, and Margot Robbie as this character is just a whole lot of fun. And when I first saw it, I had more fun than I was expecting, and I really loved all the humor and all the R-rated humor that it was going for. Went a little too overboard with some of the F-bombs, but it was nice seeing that continuation of Harley Quinn's story from after the Joker, just going on her own journey, and getting her this relationship with this kid really elevated her character development a whole lot more than Suicide Squad did. And I'll add to that, the action was just a whole lot of fun. It was nice also seeing Black Canary and the Huntress and Renee Montoya as the Birds of Prey. And seeing these elements in the DCEU was just great. I really enjoyed this movie. Bringing us into the top 5 is Shazam. And this is one of the most fun movies in the DCEU because Zachary Levi is just great at playing this man-child. He can do all the humor and shenanigans, just pretty hilarious. And the big standout also was Freddie Freeman. Just him as helping Shazam out with the mentoring and all that stuff, him being the superhero knowledge boy. He just fit in with Shazam's humor like pretty great. And I also really loved this movie's ideal about like finding family and just Billy's journey as an orphan coming into this foster home. It just brings in a lot of nice human elements to his character. And I also really love Dr. Savannah as the villain. Just his motivation for me was just perfect. Some of the humor in this movie seemed pretty forced each time I rewatched it, but I absolutely love this movie, and it's one of the most fun movies in the DCU. At number 4 is The Suicide Squad from 2021, and I think this movie was just a huge improvement off of the first Suicide Squad, mostly because it allowed us to like connect with the characters a whole lot better, especially Bloodsport. I think that his storyline was just perfect, and his character arc just fit in very well. And unlike the first Suicide Squad movie, it had an ending with the characters, all the Suicide Squad, coming in to do the right thing, standing up to Amanda Waller in the third act, and it just like paid off like so well going into that, and like their character development and all that stuff. And it could even have you care about Rick Flag dying, which I wouldn't have cared much for that in the first Suicide Squad. And that's what this movie was able to do so well, taking some of our returning characters and making them a whole lot more interesting. And this movie also had some pretty great action, especially all the stuff with King Shark. So this movie was just amazing, and it just had a whole lot of heart. Bringing us into the top 3 is Wonder Woman. And I know that this movie is widely regarded as one of the best superhero movies of all time, and that's mostly because the the story that Wonder Woman is given throughout this movie is just perfect and so powerful. And even some of the humor between her and Steve Trevor was just a whole lot of fun. And what Gal Gadot was able to bring to this character was just great. Whether she's doing some of that fish out of water humor when she first comes into our world, man's world, it's just a whole lot of funny. And it was even some nice action that she was able to bring into the table. And even some of the score, it elevates it to a whole nother level. And so this movie was just amazing when I first saw it. I even liked it throughout World War One. It lost a little bit of steam going into the final battle with Ares, but still, this movie is just absolutely amazing. The runner-up here is Zack Snyder's Justice League, and Zack Snyder was just able to improve this movie a whole lot more going back from the 2017 version, and the fact that he was given this privilege to complete his vision for the movie was just outstanding, and just one of the best decisions, because this movie was just a whole lot better than just everything that it improved on from the 2017 version just made the Justice League a much better movie. And the fact that he was able to make the Flash actually heroic, or even develop the relationship between Cyborg and his father a whole lot more, it just made the movie just better, and just a whole lot better. And I also even loved the heroics that they did in the third act with Flash using all of his speed to turn back time. It just made for a great third act, and actually bringing Darkseid into the story, bringing Darkseid into the DCEU, and making Steppenwolf a much more compelling villain. They did that a whole lot better than the 2017 version. And Zack Snyder, the fact Zack Snyder was given this privilege was just perfect. It's not at number one because I just think that the movie was too long. It's 4 hours long, and that's not usually the best length for a big blockbuster. So if it was actually released in the theater, that probably wouldn't work. So a movie that's pretty great, but it gives me some reasons like logic as to why it was mandated down to a 2-hour runtime. But still, just one of the greatest movies in the DCEU. But definitely coming in first place is gonna have to be Man of Steel. And if I'm wrong, I don't know if I'm wrong or not, but I'm pretty sure that this was the first superhero movie that I saw in the theater. And Henry Cavill is basically my Superman. I didn't grow up with Christopher Reeve and Brandon Routh and all those guys. And so this was 21st century Superman action that I got to see in the theater. So it was just amazing when I first saw it. And Henry Cavill is pretty much my Superman, and he has been for almost 10 years up to this point. And every time I rewatch this movie, I just love it a little bit more. Everything that Zack Snyder did with this movie, whether it's with the score or the action, or even the character, the story with Superman, having that development with Superman's story, him trying to find this place in this world, him coming from this other planet and just adapting to the Earth and finding his purpose. That was all about what this movie was all about, was Kal-El, Superman, finding his purpose on Earth. And I also love what they did with the villain. General Zod is probably one of the best villains in the DCEU. And that action sequence between him and Superman was just amazing at the end. I also loved Amy Adams as Lois Lane. And so this movie had the music. It had Superman, one of my favorite superheroes of all time. And it had the action. This movie just did it all great, even with the character development of Kal-El. And every time I rewatch it, I just love it a whole lot more. And unlike all the other movies, this one is the one that I have the least criticisms about. So this movie definitely comes in at number one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you like this video. Do you agree with me about Man of Steel? Make sure to leave me down in the comments what your favorite DCU movie is. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.